The Vatican city-state, the smallest country on earth, is a living paradox. It serves as the spiritual center for more than 1 billion people, yet its wealth and influence rival those of the world's largest corporations and sovereign powers. What you see here is not just a collection of sacred relics. It is a financial empire carefully built over 2,000 years with the same precision, political maneuvering, and high-stakes deal-making that defined history's most powerful dynasties. The story of the Vatican's wealth is not simply a religious tale. It is a lesson in power, economics, and the machinery that turns faith into material assets. This journey began not with a miracle, but with a decree. In the 4th century, after years of persecution, the Roman Empire issued the Edict of Milan. That single political act legalized Christianity. Overnight, what had been an underground movement gained legitimacy and, crucially, the right to own property. The doors opened wide. Wealthy converts, eager to prove their devotion, began donating vast tracts of land, buildings, and precious metals to the church. This became the first seed capital. The early church was shrewd, accepting tangible assets, fields, vineyards, urban estates that generated steady, self-sustaining income. In no time, the church became a formidable landholding power. This land-based wealth soon merged with the church's earliest financial innovation, the tithe. By the Middle Ages, the mandatory payment of 10% of all agricultural output or income was not just a religious duty. It was a spiritual requirement tied directly to salvation. In practice, it became Europe's first universal, non-negotiable tax. This endless, decentralized flow of revenue, a faith-powered perpetual annuity, cemented the Church's economic dominance. By the High Middle Ages, monastic estates and ecclesiastical lands accounted for a massive share of Europe's arable land, making the Church the continent's largest and most enduring economic entity, surpassing even the holdings of kings. But the Renaissance popes wanted more. They sought grandeur, influence, and geopolitical leverage. Their next financial engine was indulgences. The idea was simple but brilliant. Spiritual debts could be settled with money. By purchasing a certificate, one could reduce the time a deceased relative spent in purgatory. In effect, salvation was for sale. This mechanism became the primary funding source for the most ambitious construction project of the era, the rebuilding of St. Peter's Basilica. Gold poured into the treasury, financing breathtaking art, monumental architecture, papal armies, and the lavish lifestyles of Renaissance pontiffs. The contrast was striking. While priests preached against greed and usury, the papal court operated like a polished financial hub, partnering with Italian banking dynasties like the Medici and the Fuggers to move, multiply, and lend capital across Europe. The shepherd of souls had become the ultimate sovereign financier. Yet indulgences carried the seeds of their own destruction. The blatant commercialization of grace became the central grievance that ignited the Reformation. When a German monk declared that salvation could not be bought or sold, he triggered a religious and financial upheaval that shattered the Church's monopoly. Nations broke away, sovereign territories defected, and the immense, mandatory revenue stream from much of Europe evaporated. Wealth had built splendor, but it had also cultivated resentment that could no longer be contained. Centuries later came the most devastating financial blow. In 1870, the Kingdom of Italy seized the Papal States, stripping the Pope of temporal sovereignty and the vast income tied to those lands. The Vatican was reduced to a tiny fragment of territory. Its empire seemed dismantled, its influence reduced to museums and relics. But history rarely offers examples of resilience as dramatic as what followed. The comeback arrived in 1929 with the Lateran Treaty, a deeply political pact with Benito Mussolini's fascist regime. Seeking legitimacy in the Church's endorsement, Mussolini granted the Vatican enormous compensation for its lost lands. This was no modest settlement. It included substantial cash payments and a vast portfolio of government bonds worth billions in today's currency. It was, in effect, a colossal tax-exempt bailout that instantly revived the Vatican's liquidity and transformed it from a feudal landowner into a modern capital investor. With this influx of capital, the Vatican laid the foundation for its modern financial system, the Institute for Religious Works, better known as the Vatican Bank. Officially created to manage funds for religious orders and charities, it was built with extraordinary secrecy and sovereign protection. Over time, it evolved into a financial powerhouse operating beyond the reach of conventional oversight and tax regulations. That secrecy entangled the institution in some of the most notorious financial scandals of the late 20th century. Allegations of global money laundering, illegal arms financing, and intelligence partnerships swirled for decades. The 1982 collapse of Banco Ambrosiano, culminating in the mysterious death of its chairman, God's banker, found hanging beneath London's Blackfriars Bridge, remains the most infamous episode exposing the Vatican's shadowy ties to the underworld of international finance. Today, the Vatican's true financial balance sheet remains a closely guarded secret, hidden behind layers of autonomous institutions and sovereign privileges. Its non-liquid assets, Michelangelo's frescoes, priceless treasures of the Vatican museums, are beyond valuation. Its global investments are managed with a discretion that even Wall Street titans would envy. The lesson is clear. The Vatican is a case study in how powerful institutions, whether governments, central banks, or corporate empires, can blend a public moral mission with a private, ruthless financial agenda. The spiritual facade conceals the machinery of temporal power. When you look at the majestic halls of St. Peter's, you see not only faith, but the engineered outcome of a 2,000-year-old financial system built on tithes, indulgences, political bargains with dictators, and the operation of a sovereign shadow bank. The Vatican's wealth did not descend from heaven. It was systematically accumulated on earth. An institution that preaches simplicity and charity demonstrates the oldest rule of political economy. Trust is the most valuable currency, and those who command it reap the greatest rewards. The real question is not whether to believe the mission, but rather, who ultimately profits from your belief.